Okay, g'day everyone. Welcome back to my channel. So I've got something a little bit different today. I reached out to a guy called Marcel, who is actually the owner of a shop, an online visual astronomy specialist shop in Australia, and it's called Astro Dog. Now, the reason I reached out to Marcel is because Marcel, I could tell from looking at one or two of his videos on YouTube, really knows a lot about visual astronomy, and as I'm currently trying to get back into visual astronomy and do a lot more visual, I wanted to ask him, a lot of those questions that probably people like myself who are mainly into astrophotography and really don't know a lot about things like eyepieces and visual astronomy, a lot of those sort of obvious questions. So look, Marcel was kind enough to give me about an hour's worth of his time, which I really, really appreciate. And he was great to speak to, and he had some great insights into not only some of the technical aspects as to the questions that I was asking, but also the reason that he feels visual astronomy is so important. So I thought he really had some great insights into just visual astronomy as a hobby as well, and why it's so sort of important, especially in a time when I guess most of us out here are kind of mainly into astrophotography. So look, without further ado, I will play our discussion for you, and I hope that you get something out of this. And yeah, thanks once again to Marcel for giving me some of his time and answering these questions. I had a really enjoyable time having this chat with him. So without further ado, here we go. Out of my comfort zone here with eyepieces.
Oh well, we'll see how it goes.
All right, yeah. So maybe if you could just talk about your background and how you got into astronomy a little bit. Yeah, it'd be
Mm.
interesting to know.
Yeah, a lot of people get into astronomy in their early years. That wasn't actually the case for me at all. I had no idea about it. A few of my friends had it, looked pretty complicated, and I was never introduced to it. It wasn't until I went into teaching and I became a high school teacher for many years, and that was quite a stressful job. And eventually, I decided to leave teaching and recover some of my lost nerves. And ironically enough, it was astronomy for me that did it. Um, what had happened for me is due to all that stress, I needed to just take a step back and just slow down mentally. And astronomy was something that you cannot force, it is impossible. You are going to learn, and it's going to just take the amount of time that it takes. And so it was very useful for me. I was out there by myself. I was able to think a little bit more clearly and just take my time getting to know astronomy again. So I actually had a really awesome telescope to start with. I had a Borg ED refractor. I didn't even know how good it was.
Wow.
And it was all very complicated. I sold it, but then it stuck with me. And I went back to it later on. Again, astronomy, because it just ticked a box for me, and I just kept being drawn back into it, even though it was quite hard.
Yeah.
And when I picked it up the second time, it was long term. I was really into it then. And eventually, by then, I had qualifications in business and education and all the rest of it. And I thought, yeah, I can go with business as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. It's interesting what you say there, just in terms of like false starts with it, because I know for myself, I probably got into it about 15 years ago, and I had that kind of thing again where I bought a Dobsonian, and I really liked it for a while, and then because I really didn't know a lot about astronomy, I kind of looked at the main things, and then I kind of got a little bit bored and left it. But then I've come back to it like a couple of times since. So yeah, it's interesting how it works out like that sometimes.
That is really interesting. And I think if all you're doing is looking at the eyepiece, you are not going to see big color like you would with astrophotography, of course. You're seeing something very different.
Yeah.
And but once you gain an understanding of what it is that you're actually looking at,
Yeah.
what the real objects are behind it, the fact that the coal sack is actually a dirty nebula cloud that is so dark and deep and dense that it blocks out the sun behind it.
Yes.
That's where it goes. And where you follow like black rivers
Yeah.
that just flow out of some of the nebulas. I mean, I have a particular fascination for dark nebula. I just think they're amazing. So,
Yeah, yeah, they're particularly nice. Yeah, when I see Dark Nebula taken well, yeah, they're really phenomenal, aren't they? The way they look.
mm,
All right, so yeah, maybe if you can just give us a basic overview of like types of eyepieces out there, because I know for myself, being a beginner with this, I've kind of just gone down, I guess, the road of most people are telling you to get, a Plossl. So I've looked at some. I've kind of got basically my eyepieces as I've decided to spend a little bit of money on it. I've got a Barda Hyperion 13 millimeter here, and I've got
yep.
like a 24 millimeter, and they're kind of the two. They're like the two reasonable eyepieces I've sort of purchased as I'm getting into visual, but I really don't know much beyond the fact
Yeah.
that they were sort of recommended as an average eyepiece.
Well, for starters, when you do get your scope, the odds are that you'll get some eyepieces with it. What they usually give you is what, a 25 mil and a 10 or something like that. And they usually are Plossls. Plossls are a terrific design. They are great. The problem, of course, is Plossls, as you go down and start getting more higher in magnification, the eye relief becomes very unforgiving. So it's quite rare to find Plossls less than 10 mils just because of the eye relief becomes quite uncomfortable. We have an exceptional Plossl Planet Killer for about 7.5 mils. That's about as far as it goes. But then you start struggling with that design. So, then you start going into well-corrected eyepieces. So there is a range of them. Some of the cheaper telescopes, they come with fairly nasty eyepieces. But there's a really, in astrophotography, what you want is you want a fast scope. And the reason obviously is because if you have an f5 versus an f10, an f5 for astrophotography collects light twice as fast as what the f10 does. And so you're always looking, oh, look, that's f4.5. That's like awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
But the very thing that makes the f ratio so suitable for astrophotography is actually a problem for visual. So for visual, if you're using your eyes, you actually prefer slower scopes. So something like an f8 is good. F10 is even better. F15, wow. I mean, that's terrific for your eye. So the problem is a lot of your astrophotographers may have a terrific scope, but the problem is the F ratio is so fast that it is unsuitable for visual, or at least very expensive to get into. The problem, let me just explain this a bit further. If you've got a f8 or an f10, you can get away with using very inexpensive eyepieces and getting quite extraordinary results, even with very inexpensive ones. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on your eyepiece collections. But if you have an f4.5 or something slow, f5 even, you start needing to get very well corrected eyepieces to adjust for it. Let me just see if I can explain it in another way. But ultimately, what you'll want to do is you'll want to get if you insist on using your existing astrophotography equipment for your visual experience, you'll just want to spend a little bit more money getting a well-corrected one. So the Televue Ethos, for example, is very suitable for fast scopes. So that was something that could work. Or some of your Beta Morpheuses work very well as well. But if you have a nice long scope, even very inexpensive eyepieces will do very well.
Okay. Wow. So in a way, I guess you could make that choice then between getting a second like telescope and then saving the money, on the eyepieces and sort of having something that's more dedicated for sort of visual. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. I'll just explain a little bit further. Basically, what a telescope does is it collects light, brings it into focus at the eyepiece or the camera lens. So light is forced into a converging cone, and the higher the F ratio is, the longer and the skinnier that cone of light is. So at F15, the edge rays are angled at 2 degrees from the center. At F10, it's 3 degrees. But at F5, that turns into 6 degrees.
Oh wow.
So it has a huge sort of a huge effect that just goes up and up and up.
Yep.
And your eyepiece the design of it has to become increasingly complicated to accommodate for that sort of thing. So that's where you start needing to purchase special adapters and things like that to go onto the back of the eyepiece at that high f ratios. But you honestly, for visual, the most beautiful instrument, in my opinion, is something like a 4-inch f15 or f12, f15 if it's just an acro, or something like an f11, f12 with an ED glass in it. That is an unbeatable,
Right.
beautiful, magnificent refractor. And you can put in a beta 2-inch Amici prism into it, which will has a huge clear aperture at it, and then you add a specialty eyepiece on top, something like. Actually, I'll just talk about how to spend money. The
Yeah.
best thing to do is spend on one premium eyepiece, the one that you're going to use the most. Now, which one is it? Which one should you get? That's the question. The answer is one that gives you about. I'll tell you how to calculate it. What you do is you get your F ratio of the scope that you intend to use for visual and double it, double the number, and you will have your ideal eyepiece magnification, the eyepiece the eyepiece that you want to use. So, for example, if I've got an f12 instrument, you double that, I get to 24. So I
Yep.
want a 24 millimeter
Okay.
eyepiece, right? So
Got you.
if you're determined to use your f5, go, put a little bit more money into something that will give you about a 10 millimeter.
Yep.
And because that will work for the most of it. You'll be at that particular eyepiece for almost everything. And the other thing you want to do is get the most low-powered eyepiece you possibly can, because that's beautiful for scanning. So you put that in and you go around very slowly and you have a little bit of a look at your different objects and find interesting things to look at. And the real interesting part is when you find something, identify it, learn to identify it, find out what it is, look it up in books and learn what it is that you're actually looking at. That
Mm.
will be really, really enjoyable. So it's something I purchased some time ago. Just to give you a bit of a look. I'm a big fan of these ones here. That's the Deep Sky Companion series from Omiara, and there's one here on Messier Objects, which is that's like worldwide. But also, and this is my favorite one, the Coldwell Objects, which is more focused on objects which are in the southern hemisphere, and they are really, really amazing. Some lesser known objects, and they're also very good for astrophotography, of course. Some of those nice targets to look at. People are always looking for things to target. But if they're for astrophotography, of course, just keep in mind that you may well look at them and not see very much because of your color. You might not even know that it's there
Yeah.
until you open. So, for those of you who've got astrophotography, you've already got the better half of it anyway. You've already got a huge amount of technical skills that you're going to be able to bring to bear on your visual, but you're also going to have to learn some new tricks.
Yeah. I've certainly, yeah. Certainly for me, like, I mean, I went out. The weather's been pretty bad down here, but I went out a night or two ago when I got like an hour or two, and yeah, definitely, like you say, I think having sort of planning your night a little bit, I found, and like sort of actually writing down some of the objects, some of those catalog numbers, so you can actually go and have a look at them, and getting used to that change that you're going to sit there and actually look for a little while, and it takes there's definitely an art and a skill to it. I'm finding, yeah, in terms of, I mean, I'm only Bortle 5.6. It's not terrific, but still looking at something like that Amiga Centauri, I keep going back to that globular cluster, which is just fascinating.
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's also different just like you've got your software that you choose for your astrophotography that you need to become familiar with to do a good job with your targets. There's also software that you want for your visual that is quite good. So I think there's one of those I think I use for memory office called Sky Planner, where you can enter in your scopes and start, and it actually can create an observing plan for you. You enter in all
Okay.
your equipment, you look at your enter in all your eyepieces. You'd say when you want to start observing, you enter your locations, and it will select targets for you that are going to be suitable for where you are, that will give you a good view and even tell you the ideal eyepiece to use to look at it. So if I find it a little bit later on, well, I'll send that link through from that software
Great.
for
Yeah.
that one I'd recommend. And I've used it. Oh, it's called Sky Tools. There we are, Sky Tools
Tools.
4.
Great.
And it's a visual standard edition, and you can upgrade it to astrophotography, and it gives you more features and so on. But all you need is really visual, and it's great fun to have a look at.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's good. It's good to know. Yeah, so I guess the next question that I've got here is a relationship between, and maybe you probably touched on this already, but the relationship between the telescope and the eyepieces, such as f ratio. So I guess you've kind of touched on that, haven't you, already? Really. So yeah, what eyepieces would you recommend to a beginner getting into visual?
Sure. Just to go back a tiny bit first, with your visual scopes, if you're choosing one for visual, you also need to just think about what's most bearable for you. As far as chromatic aberrations go, so if you've already got astrophotography gear, chances are that you've picked a refractor, which is fine. It's quick cooling, no collimation. They've got very good contrast, good light gathering, and so on. But also very expensive. If you go the other way and go to something like a nice Dob, well, it's huge. I mean, just the light aperture of one of those light buckets is fantastic. But you also have now got diffraction spikes. You will have coma around the side, and that can affect your visual viewing experience as well. So just keeping in mind those chromatic problems that you are going to have depending on what sort of a scope you've chosen. How do you build an eyepiece set? Well, when I started, I sort of did research for hours and hours and hours, and I picked the very, very best for one particular thing. And then when I went to a different brand, and then I got one of those ones. And so I ended up getting this little collection of really, really top eyepieces and I found it just horrible to use. I just hated it after a while. Look, the fact is that when you go outside, you're going to have, your transparency that you've got up in the sky. You've got all these visual factors up there, that are going to affect your viewing far more than that extra 2 or 3% that you're going to be able to squeeze out by going to some exotic premium brand. They've all got different sizes and different. It got really irritating to plan and know what you want to go to. So my recommendation these days is choose a premium set, something like maybe the Beta Morpheus series, which will go up to about 17.5 mils, right? Or you go your Hyperions, which are very good. And the Beta ones the eyepieces are pretty indestructible. They're magnificent. And they come with so many accessories. If you ever need to connect it to anything else, the odds are you will be able to, because Beta have got so many adapters and various things to do. So I'd recommend go for something like Beta. And then once you've done that, just keep adding one set at a time and start off with your premium eyepiece, which is going to be double whatever your F ratio is. That's sort of where you should focus it. And what you'll want out of a set is you'll want your 30 times magnification, 30, 60, 90, 120, and 150. So that's 5 eyepieces.
Okay.
You really won't need any more than that. Right. And a cheap one's a Mead, if you just want to get a basic set. They're $350 from our website for the whole lot. So you get a 6.5, 9.7, 12.4, 20, 26, and 32 mil for like $350. That's like that's cheap. Right?
Especially, I mean, in astrophotography land, that's like, wow, bargain. I'm going for that. Yeah.
That's right. And I mean, some people as well, if you're going to go zoom eyepiece, I mean, some people just boom, and then you've only got one eyepiece. You don't have to muck around the dark and switch things around. Sounds terrific. Go for that. If you are going to do a zoom, go for the Beta zoom. It is the only one worth doing. There is no zoom as good as that one. You hear it has like a lovely click, so you know exactly what magnification you're viewing as you've got it.
Yep.
It's relatively parfocal, requiring minimal adjustment to go from one to another. The Beta zoom is relatively friendly for your tighter F ratios. It's just a really lovely one to start with. Again, at Astro Dog website, we've got those there, and that they sell well, and I've never had one come back. Everyone who's got one loves them. You'll never find them secondhand because everybody keeps them.
So, that's always a good sign.
Yeah, that is a good sign. So
yeah. And what's the range on that one in terms of their how many millimeter range is it on the
It
zoom?
goes from 8 to 26 from
Oh,
memory.
okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just have a real quick look. So yeah, you are saving yourself a few dollars by going to something like a beta zoom. So 8 to 24, sorry. So what you only really need one. If you're going to get the beta zoom and you're going to be using that a lot, maybe you can get away with just the beta zoom, and then getting something for your planetary where you really want to get up close, just to get something less than the 8 for your really high magnification, and then
Yeah.
having like a scanning eyepiece. So I'll tell you what you could do for those two. For your scanning eyepiece, you'll be shocked at how good one of the Cason 40 millimeter Plossels is for scanning. The contrast is terrific. The comfort, the oversized lens on there just makes it so easy to look through. You've got no kidney beaning compared to a lot of your other brands. It's just a wonderful eyepiece and so cheap. So that would do for your 40 mil. Going up the other end, I recommend getting an orthoscopic eyepiece. Orthoscopic eyepieces are distortion free, and again, astrophotography land, they're very inexpensive. If you want to, while you can still get some Fujiyamas. Fujiyamas are made in Japan by the Ohi factory. They're shutting down production. They will. We've got what we've got, and then that's it. They will never be available again. The 25 mils have sold out. The 18 mils have sold out. I think we've still got 12 and a halfs and some other magnifications. So you can snap up those. They're about only 150, $160.
Yep.
So they're excellent. And you can also because we knew that the Fujiyamas are going out, we've asked Cason to manufacture a second type of orthoscopic eyepiece, which is a similar design to the old University Optics Volcano orthoscopic eyepieces. And they have the sort of a volcano shape and the lenses at the top, and that makes the eye placement very easy to go with. I mean, if you get it wrong, it'll poke you in the eye, but the
So
things we put up with.
so they're very good for so those orthoscopics. They're sort of very good for the high magnification stuff when you're doing maybe planetary or that
They
kind of.
are.
Yeah.
Yes, and one reason why some people go, oh, I don't know about orthoscopics, they see the 45-degree angle and they think, oh, but my eyepieces, I'm so used to the 79 degrees or whatever else they've got. But for planetary,
No.
you don't need that view at all. What you care about is accurate color representation. You care about it being free of distortion. You care about the quality of the optical design, the contrastability of it. And for that, orthoscopics are magnificent. They
Right.
are wonderful.
Wow.
And again, at that price, we've got the Cason ones up there for 150 or so, or even less. You can get a whole pack for
Sure.
very, very little, and you won't cry if
Yeah.
if you need to move them on one day or whatever. It's not much.
Okay, cool. Well, that's a good gem of information. Yeah. Um, so let's see where are we up to now. So I've got one question I've got here is quality differences and brands of eyepieces, because I guess for myself, coming from an astrophotography world where I've sort of dived into astro, and now I feel I'm relatively comfortable between brands and the different glasses
Mm.
that come up all the different times. I guess things like Televue get sort of banded around quite a lot, and I guess one thing for me is it is the premium of a Televue necessarily worth it?
Hey, if you
Yeah,
got the money, go splash it around.
yeah,
But the fact is that sadly, paying double for an eyepiece will not give you double the views.
yeah.
It will simply only add maybe 2 or 3%. And then
Mm,
there's only certain people, you know, are able to even tell the difference between the two of them.
yeah.
If I can just I'll reference some information from a publication from Roger Clark from Visual Astronomy on the Deep Sky. It's a very, very, very difficult to get publication. He specializes in getting the most out of your eyes when you're actually going and doing. And it's got some bad news for those of us that um, uh, that want to get the most out of our eyes. one of the things he mentions is it can actually take, according to Clark, it can even take days for our eyes to get into premium territory for viewing objects.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
work in the sun out there a whole lot without any sunnies on, it's going to affect your night vision. It's terrible. So he actually recommends wearing some UV shades outside for days before you go and do a good session. Once you actually do start observing, once you do start observing, he says you need to wait about half an hour in full darkness before your eyes adjust. So the reason for that is our eyes have got two types of seeing mechanisms built into the design. The first part is rods and cones. So cones are the part of your eye that allow you to perceive color. And rods are incredibly sensitive, and they're more around the outside of your eye, right? And they what give you your night vision, your extraordinary night vision. And our two systems can blend one into the other depending on the light. So if you go into full darkness, your cones will start deactivating because there's nothing, and your rods start getting really, really sensitive to what's going on. And after about 30, 40 minutes, you have achieved optimum viewing. Like what you will be able to see is quite extraordinary, even in full black darkness. So that's now you're primed, you're ready to go. Now he does have a few other little qualifications. He says, for one thing, there's no alcohol. Okay, so no beers out there with it because alcohol can interfere with the system. There's a few other little tips that he has that we might have a chat about another day. But of course, if then you have a light on, that will immediately kill it. It resets the timer.
Wow.
You've got to wait another 30 minutes, 40 minutes before your eyes get back to where they were, and you are cursing the vehicle that just drove down the road, or the dude that flicked on the torch. You know,
so I guess you best. I mean, I have one of those little handheld red torches. Do you have a preference in terms of do you have a red head torch or a red light head torch or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. We had when I started up, we wanted to fill that niche in the market. The red lights that we had, honestly, they were very poor. For starters, they were heavy. Some of them used three batteries in there, and man, after 20 minutes, it really gets annoying. You had them extremely bright. There's this funny idea out there that you've got to make headlights as bright as possible, and they're the ones that sell. But if you want the opposite, if you're going out for astronomy purposes, you actually want a red light that is extremely dim. You just want it dim enough to be able to detect your equipment, to read a star map. That's it. That's all you want. You don't want anything to kill your night vision off. So first of all, it's got to be red. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that as you try to flick on the light, it likes to go through all those modes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Useless.
Yeah.
You're flicking through it. They only give you one button. You got these cursed white flashing modes and all this going on, and it's a nightmare. So what at Astro Dog, we've got those headlamps there. They're about $25 or $28, whatever they are, and it's all you have to do is remember that white is right, and then the left one is the red one. See?
Right.
So one click, right, red goes on. One click, red goes off. That's it.
That's good.
There's nothing else. No cycling, and very dim, very, very low light. Now, if you do want a little bit more, we've got a Pro one which ups it uses a special type of red LED, which is a darker type of, it pushes it even deeper into the dark reds. And that way we can get a little bit more brightness without it affecting your eyes. So just a couple of those headlamps will do wonders for your viewing. And actually, even if you're astrophotography, honestly, you're probably still going to muck around with equipment and do stuff in the dark. And you don't want to be running around there with white light.
And I guess that's the thing. I guess that's the tricky part with phones, isn't it, as well? That whole thing of, I know that those planetariums on your phone, they've got the red light mode on, but it's, often your phone locks and then you're back into normal mode. And now, of course, your screen's bright again and you've lost so I guess, would you recommend just against, just don't use the phone kind of thing at night?
Oh, sometimes you have to. I hate using my
Yeah,
phone, and then it does. The countdown timer sort of restarts. I have to wait
yeah,
ages before everything starts going back to the way it should. I like to print my sky charts out,
yeah.
and you've got that mode possible in that piece of software that I mentioned there previously about your visual
Oh,
planning.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can you can print it out and then use a headlamp, and then you're all good. You
yeah,
you won't have to really worry about anything else.
yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. Yeah,
they're a bad idea, phones,
yeah,
and then they ring, and then yeah,
yeah.
and then you just
Message
touch
pops up.
them.
Yeah,
Yep, the software will be. You can even set to night mode. But what about the rest of the phone? It doesn't know what you're doing,
yeah,
so it can go out, and then you've got to try and go back in, and you've got to look at the thing in order. It's
yeah,
yeah, pretty terrible.
yeah. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Um. So yeah. I was wondering about I guess eye relief. I've got written down here. And also, I don't. This probably like links into people like myself and you wearing glasses as well. I mean, I've
Yeah,
found it okay to just be taking my glasses off. I have this thing, obviously, where sometimes I'm trying to look at what I've written down, putting my glasses back on, then taking it off, constantly for the eyepiece. But is there an ideal eye relief? Is it more eye relief is better, or how do you sort of see that?
you will naturally start getting more and more eye relief happening in your eyepieces the lower the magnification is. So, for example, a 40 millimeter Plössl has so much eye relief that, frankly, it becomes almost unpleasant. Um,
Right.
and on the other hand, if you have very high magnification, your eyeball almost has to be touching the tip.
Yeah.
So it's a question of what you can tolerate, and it's certainly going to be one of those things, which is why I mentioned the case on 40 millimeters is supremely comfortable with its eye relief. I don't find I need to do anything unnatural to make it comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but then and that's why you after like we do have 7 millimeter Plössls, but a lot of people go, whoa, I'm going to pick orthos from that point onward, just because those are designed for those really high magnification viewing, and you'll do quite well out of it. Um, the other possibility that I should mention now, I know it's not on our sheet to talk about, but I thought I'd just mention it.
Sure.
There is a possibility with some of these refractors to do Bino viewing. And what that involves is it involves setting up your diagonal, and then you get a set of Bino viewers. They look like binoculars, but they end up in a single point underneath, and you install that into your diagonal, and you look in, and you actually end up using both eyes to look at a particular object that you've got. And if you look at it mathematically, it should seem like it wouldn't make a difference because it's splitting the light across the two eyes. So it's not exactly the same. But strangely enough, our engineering in our minds is there to complement these two vision systems together, and you end up being able to see a lot of contrasts and a lot of features and objects that you wouldn't be able to see before. And by adjusting the Bino viewers correctly, you'll get one beautiful round view with both of your eyes that will just pull out a lot of the contrast. So just
Ah,
for your viewers to be aware of that option, and
yep.
Bino viewers can get expensive, which is great because you astrophotography guys seem to have a lot more money than us visual guys. Um, and you can pick up some really good stuff. Just with those ones though, you do have to be a bit careful with your eyepieces. You can't put any eyepiece into them to make them work well. You typically go for very light eyepieces, like some Masuyama 16 millimeter eyepieces, things like that. They work really well. You don't want to put on Beta Morpheus clunkers into them or try
Yeah.
anything heavy.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
just wreck your experience. Don't even try it.
Oh, that's good to know because I've seen those and they are intriguing. So
Mm.
yeah, that's good to know. I've often wondered exactly how they work or if they're worth trying. So yeah. Yeah, so I was just wondering about the glasses. I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine, just taking my glasses off. Are there people there that actually have to wear glasses with their eyepieces?
Yeah, look, I'm actually with you, Oliver. I take my glasses off. I don't see why I should degrade my vision by adding yet another piece of plastic or glass between me and my favorite
Yeah.
object. And the telescope with its focus, of course, can naturally correct for the vision problems of the vast majority of us. However, it could also be that, and this can be a bit of a shock when you're actually going into visual astronomy, it might be that you suffer from astigmatism. So astigmatism is this really, and it's dreadful when you find out you've got it. But you're looking at an object and you see they're like there's like differing points of diffraction light that are coming off it of varying lengths. So if that's the case, then your eyes may have astigmatism, and sometimes it can be irritating because you're almost certain that the equipment is wrong, that it's got astigmatism,
Right.
So you're trying to work out, is it me or is it the equipment I've got? And in that case, it could be that your optometrist may be able to prescribe your eyeglasses to have a astigmatism formula built in that neutralizes it. Unfortunately, however, there's also something called complex astigmatism, which means your eyes aren't just a little bit stuffed in one particular thing that can easily be adjusted. They're like mega stuffed.
Oh no.
and then you got to wear, you may not even, you can't even correct for it. So out of interest though, Televue do have some options. If you do have astigmatism and it is
Okay.
severe, you can purchase additional things that go on top of the eyeglass that can be put in a particular combination, and then that will get rid of your astigmatism when you're using the Televue eyepieces. So there you go. It's
Yeah. Wow.
interesting.
Yeah. Didn't know that one. Yeah. Um, I guess next question is what strategies can we use to see a little bit more in the night sky? Like I've heard of averted vision, which I'm sort of, playing with,
Yeah.
and I can sort of see the advantages of that. So we're just wondering, someone like yourself who's been doing this a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. Averted vision is one of those things that can help. Apparently, also, it can take about 5 or 6 seconds for your eye to gather sufficient light from particular things to see things. So scanning the night sky too quickly is a very poor idea because you're just not giving your eyes enough time to see things. And also, you can look at things, objects, and you might see one particular element of it, and then you look a little bit later and you'll see another element of it. And you're sort of forming a composite image in your mind to be able to put that together. So that is one thing. I think the best part is just pick a good night
Yeah.
where your transparency is good and all those sort of your viewing is good. Then you'll have a much better time. Be patient. You can looking after your health. So as I was saying before, I did manage to look it up in those few minutes that we have, but you shouldn't have vitamin deficiencies. Blood sugar and oxygen levels should be adequate.
Wow.
No smoking,
Yeah.
right? As your blood alcohol levels increase, your contrast sensitivity decreases. So vitamin A and zinc is very good for maintaining sensitivity. But obviously, if you've already got enough, adding even more won't make your eyes any better. And what is shocking is training. There is a reason why experienced observers can just look and just detect all these details, and you look at that and you go, what are you talking about? They really do see it, and
Yeah.
it's training. And there are even exercises apparently that you can do to improve your vision and so on that will really, really help with it. And those exercises are in that Roger Clark's book, Visual Astronomy of the Deep Sky, that you will never own because they're just impossibly
Add a
expensive
friend.
and hard to get. So I'll have to maybe make some blogs or something on my website and just pull out some of those little gems
Yeah.
for us.
Wow. That's really interesting to know. It's not just a case of just looking and you're just gonna see everything straight away. There's actually there's an art and a craft to it, and it takes that time and experience. Yeah.
There is, and also with aging as well, your eye changes. The amount of dilation that you get out of your eye changes over time. And that's also why you can't go and say, hey, what's the best eyepiece? Well, that might be great for him, but what about you?
Yeah.
See, because your eyes are a little bit different and your age is going to be different, and some of the objects that you're looking at are different, and you're not going to be pairing that eyepiece with the same instruments as what your
Yeah.
other guy is.
Yeah.
So this is the whole why, eyepiece
Mm.
forums are full of hate and disagreement
Right.
because everyone's got these different experiences and they're all certain that they're right. Well, there are lots of reasons why the viewing experience may be different from person to person.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much like in astrophotography, when somebody asks you what's the best camera, and you're like,
Mm.
well, depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depends on a
It's
lot
the
of
Canon
factors.
60DA, of course.
Oh man. Um, here's one I think you might like, Marcel. What would be your, as someone who's a bit of an aficionado of eyepieces now, what would be your go-to favorite eyepieces?
Oh, that's such a
Or is that
hard.
too hard?
I'll tell you what it is for me right now. For me, where I'm at the moment, I am almost solely into visual. I don't do any AP anymore. I used to, and what I've decided, or the telescope I've ended up with, is my pick of either the TS Optics F11 SD, which is a magnificent refractor, quite a long one, of course, or the Cason Olympus ED, and then pairing that, as I said, with the Beta Amici prism diagonal with a wide aperture, and pairing that with a Masuyama 32 millimeter eyepiece from Japan, and that is just optimal. If you remember at the beginning, I said about premium eyepieces and choosing one that's double the
Yep.
the F
The
ratio.
F
So you can
ratio.
see
Yep.
if I'm going with an F12 and I'm pairing that with something like the 32 mil Masuyama, wow, I mean,
Yeah.
it really is going to hit that spot, for just being able to see everything. And we've talked about some of those nice objects, the Carina Nebula. We're talking, watching some of those dark black veins that spread across the sky. I love that sort of thing, and because of that huge, terrific length of that scope, I can also easily punch through light pollution. Not that that's a problem where I am. I'm in Bortle 2, so I'm pretty
Oh,
lucky
oh my God.
where I've set up. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so that would be my pick, the Masuyama, just because it's matchless, and because that huge amount of clear aperture that that
Mm.
that I allow through that, it's just wonderful. And for that matter, I don't really care too much for EQ mounts anymore. I
Mm.
prefer a very solid, heavy AZ mount that I can just swing around and look at things. And also that's nice training for me because I actually have a condition called prosopagnosia, which means I can't recognize people very easily. And
Right.
what I've learned is it also affects my navigation. I get lost remarkably easily because
Yeah.
it uses that same section of the brain. And worse for astronomy seems to be I can't remember sky constellations. It takes
Right.
me an extraordinary amount of time to recognize star constellations. So
Right.
looking around, all right, I know that's Scorpio, but where do I find the crux from there?
Yeah.
Where's See, so it takes
Wow.
me, what I've had to do, as I said, I've had to slow down and just go, you know what? It's okay if it takes me longer to learn something than somebody else that just
Yep.
looks up and gets everything. I'm
Mm.
I'm probably enjoying myself just as much or even
Exactly.
more.
And that's what
So,
counts. Yeah.
yep, exactly. Take your time,
Yeah.
and the same thing with astrophotography. I mean, if I can just throw some egg in the face of all you astrophotographers, but the problem is now with astrophotography, the devices that you can just say what you want, it locates it, it grabs
Yeah.
it, snaps shots of it, pushes it up to your
Mm.
phone. Now, is that
Yeah.
astronomy?
Yeah.
Maybe,
It's a very interesting question, isn't it? Yeah.
maybe, but if I can just suggest two parallels, one of them might be, well, suppose I'm a Trekkie, I'm a Star Trek fan, and a lot of people use transporters, right? If you were in Star Trek world, you might be doing transporters all the time. Well, then, if that's all that you had to do, would you need starships? Wouldn't you be missing out on the journey? you know,
Yeah,
What's sort of the point? You
yeah,
know, how much do you sacrifice the joy of the journey just for the sake of getting to the destination immediately?
yeah,
And I feel like that has been a tremendous step backwards in astronomy for a lot of people.
yeah,
And I think it's such a shame.
yeah,
I feel sorry for some people that just dive in so hard and they don't take time for the journey. They have no patience. They believe the solution is throwing money at everything, and they
yep,
don't really have a journey. And when they
yeah,
don't get the results that they want, they're not even happy. And I
yeah.
find that sad. It's a bit like doing a tour and seeing a country, seeing 8 countries in 7 days.
Just taking all
Would
the
you go?
pictures.
Would,
Yeah,
would you go on one?
yeah,
See? So
yeah,
for me, stepping back to doing visual astronomy is saying, no, you know what? I'm going to camp out in with this constellation for a while. I'm going to explore it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to watch it through different eyepieces at different times. I'm going to learn about what it is that I am actually looking at, what
yeah,
object it is. And you can purchase some magnificent books now that really will explore the scientific background of what it is that you're looking at and just build your science knowledge while you're at it. I mean,
yeah.
come on, that is a great journey, isn't it?
It is. It's fantastic, and it's interesting because it's one of the reasons that I'm slowly being pulled back into visual because I definitely went down a route with astrophotography where I got to one point where I had 3 rigs going in my back garden. And I was pretty stressed. I was trying to basically, it was a clear night. It's like get as much as I could in one clear night. And I got to a point then eventually I let one of the rigs go. And now generally I'll just use one rig. Occasionally I'll use two. But for that exact reason, as it's not just about, well, it's like how many rigs do you stop at then? Do I just get 10 rigs in my back garden and just take as much as I
Yeah.
can? So yeah, but
And the same debate's raged, isn't it, about renting a telescope on some mountain up in South Africa or South America, right?
yeah,
You can pay to rent. You
yep,
know, I mean, is that astrophotography? Is it? You know, where do you want to stop? Like,
yeah, yep,
this is why there's something terribly personal about seeing something for yourself with your own eyes, having to work for it, and finding out a great deal about yourself and who you really are by how
yeah,
you react to what you're reading, you know, and
yeah,
viewing and
yeah.
seeing.
Yeah,
It's great.
it's very interesting. I did my visual session the other night because I only had a short amount of time. And again, that's a great for me. It's like when I've only got a short period of time, it's actually nice to spend 2 hours just looking. But it was nice because I came inside, I literally sat down with a couple of books, wrote down some, catalog numbers, and then went outside just with my paper and my hand controller and just typed in the number. And it was just so peaceful, and actually I felt by the end of the session I was calmer as opposed to sometimes when I'm doing astrophotography, I can finish the night and be like, quite highly strung at the end of it. And you're
Yeah,
saying to yourself, this is not really the point of why I'm doing this, to be feeling stressed at the end of my astro session. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
fascinating, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. That's great info. Yeah. And good to hear about your motivations too, Marcel. Um, so that was I suppose my last question here was, is visual astronomy, what are you seeing? Are you seeing it in decline amongst like the next generation? Is everybody just jumping into wanting to do astrophotography that you're seeing, or how do you see it?
Look, the lens that I see it through is first of all as a retailer and then as a user. Look, a lot of along my fellow retailers, my competition, I suppose, they've all gone massively into the astrophotography world, and it accounts for an unbelievable proportion of money that people are spending. That's where the money's at.
Yep.
So most astronomy shops are going quite deep into it. Look, Astro Dog is a very, very small retailer. We ship all over Australia. We don't have a bricks and mortar store. We have a very light presence, so we can afford to do things that others can't, and that is we focus just on visual. We bring in unusual, interesting objects, different types of equipment that you won't get anywhere else. That's sort of where we go for. We are a visual. But has visual declined? Yes, massively. I think from a personal perspective, I wonder whether a lot of people don't really have the ability to delay gratification very much anymore.
Yep.
They want everything right now.
Yep.
They want the best pictures. They want to live their life. As I say, they live life to the full. Isn't that what we hear a lot of?
Yep.
And so people are pushing themselves to all of these outcomes that they want without having a journey, without having a childhood, I suppose. And I don't find that very satisfying at all. So I think there is a special place for visual astronomy. And as said, there are many of us who have done our stint in astrophotography, gone, yes, it's very nice. I've got a whole range of marvelous pictures, but I don't really know too much about what I've been photographing for all
Yes.
this time. And
Yep.
I want it to be more about the journey, and I want to slow down mentally. I can't just run at this pace that I've been going at. And it is something that will force you to slow down and
Mm.
recover your nerves, and just get a bit more balance in your life.
Yeah.
And a bonus for you if you look up and you can see creation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Mm. Good. Wise words, Marcel. Wise words. Um, so they were the main questions. I've just written a couple down here at the end that it just sort of came to me. I was just in terms of diagonals, how much importance do you place on the diagonal you get? Because I see the whole sort of 99%. What is it? Dialectic sort of diagonals, and how
Yeah.
important do you find that?
Uh, it is interesting. There is actually within visual, there are reasons why you will want a mirror one, and there are reasons why you will want a prism. So that's important. You have to work out which one it is that you want and which one it is that you need. The advantage of there are advantages to some prisms. Like as I said, I use an Amici Prism Beta. It's expensive, but it's incredible, and I use that with my refractor because I just get such good results out of it. For the other side of things, if you're going mirror, go dielectric. Why not?
Yeah.
It would irk me to look through something and know that if I would have spent the extra $30, I've got this expensive $2,000 scope.
Yeah.
Why didn't I spend the extra 30 and get the extra 5% reflectivity? I want that 5%. It's the difference between seeing an object and maybe not seeing it.
Right.
So I think it's certainly worth going through. One thing we have pushed for, and that we've now succeeded in getting from Cason, is that similar sort of click lock system where you just push it to the side and it immediately releases.
Oh
And you
yeah.
can just put in the next one and screw it tight. I
Yep.
think that's marvelous. I think if you're going to get one, just get that. Just you don't want to be mucking around with little screws,
Yep.
and then they scratch your eyepieces, the sides of the thing, and they grit in. And then as you push it
Yeah.
in, it starts to turn and tilt because of where it's gone in. Don't do that. Get something nice. Get a good quality diagonal that you'll enjoy using,
Yeah.
and go from there.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, that's good to know because I did purchase a reasonably good diagonal, and I was thinking, I hope this is
Yeah,
going to be
it's
worth
worth
it.
it.
But yeah, good to know. Yeah, in terms of, I know one thing for me now, as I'm getting back more into visual, most of what I've done so far has been through kind of my refractors, and I do have a little Mac as well, a 127 Maxitov. And I've got my C925 as well, but currently that's set up more for astrophotography. I have been considering: is it worth kind of going a bit more retro and getting sort of something like an 8-inch Dob again as well to have? I mean, how do you sort of see it with do you use Dobs very much?
Yes, I do use Dobs. There are two sizes in particular with Dobs that are interesting, and the two sizes are 8-inch and 10-inch. The 8 and the 10 are at the limits of what you can reasonably carry and set up without regretting it.
Yeah.
And look, you've got to pick what, look, there's nothing like 10 inches. I mean, it is huge amount of aperture, massive amount of light gathering. You're going to see some wonderful objects and you'll see a lot of color, but are you going to be willing to schlep it down the stairs? And, like if you've got to transport it, and it can become such a pain. I've known of people that have had 16-inch Dobs and have been quite prepared to swap them for something more portable because they'll actually end up using it. So you've got to be
Yeah.
careful with that. I just, as I said, for me, my perfect scope has ended up being a 4-inch f12.
Mm,
That's what I use with ED, and
yeah.
it gives me a magnificent contrast. I just can't help it. I'm just so in love with it. It's great.
Yeah. And you said you use that mainly on a did you say you use that mainly on a manual mount?
Yes, AZ.
Yeah. Yep.
You, it's not that heavy, so you don't need anything too massive.
Yep.
One very common one is the old Celestron CG4, which is similar to the Saxon and EQ5s that we've got over here in Australia, or the Cason EQ4. They're all sort of in the same league, and they just put them up and away you go. Now that is an EQ, that
Yep.
works quite well, but I found that I don't terribly mind going with an AZ and just tightening it up a little bit and just manually moving it, as an object
Yeah.
moves across. I found that doesn't bother me too much at all. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I know
if,
the
of
mount
course,
that I've got is
if you've got an observatory with an EQ6 or something, well, great, just mount it up and away you go, and
yeah.
it'll take it all automatically.
Yeah.
And it does help
Yeah.
as well with your seeing more. If an object is tracking automatically, you will get a bit of a better view of things. So both options are very good.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think they're that's probably enough probably for this session. We've covered a fair bit of ground. I'm sure we might have frustrated a few astrophotographers out there between us, but that's to be expected. Anything else? Anything else you want to add at the end there, or
No, I think I think visual's been the end destination for me. I'm
mm,
certainly and doing that, by the way, it won't close the door on astrophotography. You'll always go back to that. It's going to be great fun when a new object comes up that you want to capture, or there's something special you want to do, or
yeah,
for the long term, the slower journey, I found visual to be really satisfying.
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? How I think you know in today's day and age, I think it would probably be there's probably a group of people that would see it as maybe taking a step backwards to do visual, like you say, because it's always that more is better, and taking these great pictures is got to be better. But I can definitely see that there's such a lot of value in being out there under the stars, and just sort of like you say, just taking your time, and the way that makes you feel. I think that's really undervalued now. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Cool. All right. Well, that's fantastic, Marcel. Thanks a
And
bunch
thank
for
you
your
for the
time.
time. It's been lovely.
It's been brilliant. All right, and maybe we can do this again in the future when we've got some more visual questions, when I've learned a little bit more.
Very good.
Great. Thanks very much, Marcel. Cheers.